When you get started with automated testing, a word that you hear often is test-driven development or TDD. Test-driven development or TDD, also called test first, is an approach to build software. With TDD, you write your tests before writing the application or production code. The first time I heard this, I asked, how on earth is that even possible? How can we test the code that we haven't written? Chances are you have the same question. So let's see how TDD works. You start by writing a failing test. This test should fail because you don't have any application code that would make it pass, right? Then you'll write the simplest application code that will make this test pass. The absolute simplest. You don't want to over-engineer here. You don't want to design a class diagram with a zillion classes and methods. Use the simplest implementation that would make the test pass. Then refactor your code if necessary. These 3 steps are the foundation of TDD. You repeat these 3 steps over and over until you build a complete feature. Now, what is so special about TDD? Well, first is that your source code will be testable right from the get-go. You don't have to make any changes to your code to make it testable. Second is that every line of your production code is fully covered by tests, which means you can refactor and deploy with confidence. And third is that it often results in a simpler implementation. When you start with a big class diagram, chances are you're over-engineering and making the solution more complex. If you write enough code to make all the tests pass and that solution works, there is no reason to write more code. The fact that all your tests pass means you have fulfilled all the business requirements. So unless there is a new requirement, you don't need to write more code. And if there is a new requirement, you start by failing tests. So this is TDD. In TDD, we write our tests first. And that's why we call this approach test-driven development. So our development is driven by our tests. In contrast to TDD or test first, we have code first, which is what you have been doing so far. You start with your application code and then you write tests. Which approach is better? It depends on who you ask. In theory, TDD is more promising because of the benefits I told you. But in practice, sometimes it can get really complex and it may slow you down. If that's the case, it's better to switch to the code first approach and write your tests after.